and Shavuot, the anniversary of the Exodus and the giving of the Torah. And these 6 weeks in between, or a total of 49 days, are intended to prepare us for the Torah. And how do you prepare for the Torah? By self-refinement. So this last chapter focuses on refinement that comes through Torah itself. In other words, there are two approaches to refinement. Let's say a person has an anger problem. So they could focus on the anger and focus on how to deal with anger. And hopefully, if they have the right techniques and the right advice, you could work on anger and it could affect you in a positive way. You could change. That's one approach, and that's a valid approach. And that approach is used during this period. We have total of 7 weeks, because you start counting the days from the second day of Passover, and there are 7 emotional traits, and every week we focus on one of them. As I mentioned in the class yesterday, this week is the week of Netzach. Netzach means victory, stubbornness, stick-to-itiveness. You're not giving up. You're forcing yourself to do what's right, even if you're not ready for it emotionally. Sometimes you have to give yourself a push. You can't just rely on your feelings. Hopefully your feelings will develop, but if your feelings haven't yet developed, you have to use a certain amount of force against your own nature, and this is the week when we focus on Netzach. But there's another approach to refinement that goes along parallel to the direct approach. What I mean by direct is you're focusing on the problem. You have a problem with anger, you're focusing on anger. You have a problem with whatever it may be. It doesn't make a difference. You focus on that problem individually. But then there's another approach that you refine yourself through Torah. Just by studying Torah, the Torah has an effect on your personality. Even if you're studying the parts of the Torah that have nothing to do with your personality, especially if they have a relationship with your personality, because Torah has many qualities that give it the power to change a person. Quality number 1 is that the word Torah itself comes from a root that means guidance, direction. Torah tells us where to go and how to go. It's a GPS system. It gives you guidance. When you have the proper guidance and the proper education, even if you're not focusing specifically on a certain trait that you want to change, you want to refine, the Torah itself has that capacity just by giving you the right directions in life. But Torah is more than just direction. Torah is also divine wisdom. It's wisdom that came directly from God. Now, all wisdom comes from God, whether it's Torah or whether it's mathematics or physics, but there's a difference. Torah is God's wisdom, unadulterated God's wisdom. It's not cloaked in any other areas. It's direct and pure godly wisdom. So when we study Torah, we absorb God's own ideas that makes us more godly. And when we become more godly, then our behavior changes as well. Our personality changes as well. But then there's a third aspect to it. When Torah is not just divine wisdom, Torah is also a blueprint for creation. When God created the world, the Zohar tells us God consulted a blueprint, just as any builder who's interested in building a structure would have to have the architect draw up the blueprints, and he has to consult the blueprint. If he deviates from the blueprint, the structure will not endure. It'll fall apart. It'll crumble. You have to follow the blueprint if the architect knows what he's doing. Well, God is the divine architect, and he certainly knows what he's doing, and he drew up the blueprint, and that blueprint is Torah. And therefore, Torah has the power to affect nature, because Torah is the very source of nature. And if the Torah is absorbed in our system, it empowers us to change our nature. So there are 3 points over here. Number 1, Torah is guidance, and it's guidance from a good source. It's a good GPS. Sometimes your GPS, you can end up in the water. There's stories of that happening.
Gaza.
Yeah, whatever. Right. The GPSs don't always work, but when it's God's positioning system, that's what the G stands for, God's positioning system, then you know it's going to be good guidance. You'll get to the right place. That's one aspect of Torah. The second aspect of Torah, that you're dealing with divine wisdom. So your mind is being saturated with divine energy. So that itself has the power to refine you. And number three, Torah is the very force behind creation. It's the blueprint of creation, and therefore Torah can control the very world that it is responsible for creating, and that can change our way of thinking. We can alter our own nature through Torah. So with that introduction, Rabbi Meir said, whoever occupies himself with the Torah for its own sake merits many things. And he goes on to list a whole litany of things that studying Torah for its own sake accomplishes. Now let me just focus on Torah for its own sake. I discussed it briefly last week. I just want to apply it to this week's teaching. There are 2 ways you can approach Torah. You can approach Torah in a secondary way or in a primary way. The secondary way of learning Torah is to see what Torah will give, what benefits it'll give you. Sometimes you study Torah because you want to become knowledgeable. You want to have more knowledge. Sometimes you study Torah because it gives you guidance. That's a very good thing as well. Sometimes Torah study could be for less than positive reasons. So that's called studying Torah using the external aspect of Torah. But then there's the internal aspect of Torah, the part of Torah that is holy unto itself, not for any utilitarian purpose, not for any practical purpose. You're not studying Torah just to know how to live your life, which is not only great, but it's necessary. But you're studying Torah because it's divine wisdom. It's your way of absorbing God's presence in your system. As I mentioned last week, King David refers to Torah study as being in his intestines. He uses that analogy, just like food that you eat becomes part of you. You can't once you eat the food and digest it, you can't separate between you and the food. The same way King David speaks about how when he studied Torah, Torah became was absorbed in his system. Not the intestines, but the brain. The brain absorbs the Torah and you become one with the Torah. That's called learning Torah for its internal power, not its utilitarian function. Not because of what benefits. It's like in a relationship. You love your parents, you love your children, you love your spouse, you love your siblings. You love them because they give you benefits. Your spouse makes a living and supports you and feeds you. That's true, and you should love them for that reason as well. But that's not the reason a relationship happens, because of some benefit that you get. Maybe the benefits was the cause that you got involved with that person, but the benefits themselves are secondary. That's the external aspect of your relationship. The internal aspect of your relationship is that you're one with that person in some way, one way or another, depending on the relationship. The same thing is true over here. You're studying Torah not because the Torah is giving you something, which it does, but because it's Torah, it's God's wisdom, and I want to be part of God's wisdom. I don't need any other explanations for it. That's good enough. What's the practical difference between these 2 approaches in relation to changing our personality? If your relationship with Torah is external, it's it's not based on Torah's essence, then the Torah study that you do is measured by what benefits you get from it. And therefore there's a selfish interest. Now, selfish doesn't make it bad. We have to be very careful when we use the word selfish. It has negative connotations. But most of existence is based on selfish, self-centered demands. If we wouldn't have the need for self-preservation, a lot of people wouldn't survive. That's God planted within us the natural tendency to preserve our existence. Even animals have it. It's no different from an animal. An animal sees a threat, it runs away, it cowers, it runs away, it defends itself. So we have that nature, it's instinctive. So there's nothing wrong with having selfish interests. But when you have selfish interests, it limits you. If that's all you have, is you're governed by what's in store for you, what benefit you would get from it, the focus is still on you. And when the focus is on you, your relationships cannot be on the highest of levels. You can have good relationships, but those relationships are not the most noble. They're lacking a certain level of nobility, a certain level of sanctity. So when you're trying to refine yourself, self-refinement requires the ability to transcend your own self-interest, your own selfishness. And therefore learning Torah for its own sake, which means that you're learning Torah not for the benefits that you get. You're not focused on your benefits. You're focused on truth, on being one with the essence of truth, which is God, and this is God's wisdom, and God and His wisdom are one, as Maimonides says. That will help you refine yourself much more effectively than if your relationship with Torah is an external one, is a self-interested one. So Rabbi Meir said, whoever occupies himself with the Torah for its own sake merits many things. Then he lists a whole bunch of things. What are the many things? So some commentators say, that's a general statement, and the details are being enumerated later. Not only that, but he is worth the whole world. He is called beloved, friend, one that loves God. All these things are the details of the general statement that you merit many things. But other commentators say, no, that's a separate category. That when you study Torah for its own sake, you merit many things. What are the many things? Well, look at what the Torah says. It's the best way to describe what Torah does for you is to see what the Torah says it does. And what does the Torah say? We'll soon be reading it in the end of the book of Leviticus, of Vayikra, that if you follow my commandments, which refers to the study of Torah, I will bring the rains in their season, I will bring peace to the land, everything will be fine and dandy. In other words, you'll have a good material life. Now, the obvious question here is, this is a contradiction. You're learning Torah for its own sake, which means you don't care about the benefits. You're not learning Torah for the benefits. You're learning Torah because it's the Torah. And what is the promise? You'll get many things. You'll have a good life. You'll be healthy and wealthy and wise. Why is that something that even is important to you? You're not learning Torah for the benefits. Even if you would have none of those benefits, the person who studies Torah for its own sake will still study Torah. So the answer is, essentially, Maimonides addresses a similar question, and he explains it as follows: that all the promises of reward in the Torah are not intended as rewards. They're intended as means through which will facilitate you doing more and more good. If I want to devote my life to doing good, learning Torah, doing a mitzvah, and I don't have the ability to do it because of health reasons, because of reasons such as wars, when you can't devote yourself to the study of Torah, and that you can't do certain mitzvahs. You have certain impediments. So the person who really wants to do a mitzvah says to God, God, give me the opportunity. I want to do the mitzvah, but you're not letting me do it. So you're not asking for a reward. You're asking for the ability to do the mitzvah by removing the impediments. So that's the first thing, that if you study for its own sake, God will remove the impediments. You will merit many things. Many of the blessings that are mentioned in the Torah will be fulfilled. And therefore, not as a reward. You're not interested in the reward. What you're interested in is that you will be able to continue studying Torah. That's the guarantee, that if you study Torah for its own sake, you will have the opportunity to study Torah. And then he starts listing many different things. Number one, he is worth the whole world. What does that mean, he's worth the whole world? The world was created, our sages tell us, for one purpose, one two-part purpose. In order for the Jewish people to fulfill the teachings of the Torah. That's why the universe was created. It's a pretty powerful statement, that the whole universe was created, even the most remote galaxy, was to enable God's plan for the world to be enacted through the Jewish people who study and practice the teachings of the Torah. So that means when you study Torah for its own sake, you are the fulfillment of God's will in creating the world. The whole world is worth existing just for you. Now, you're not the only one, but even if you were the only one, the world's existence would be worthwhile. That's the very powerful statement. And actually, the truth is, the Mishnah tells us that every person should say, the world was created for me. That means the whole world revolves around me. That's pretty egotistical statement. But the me doesn't mean me just sitting around doing nothing. The me means me studying Torah and following the commandments of the Torah. That's why God created the whole world. He doesn't need all the other things in this world. Everything else in the world was there to serve those who fulfill the purpose of creation. As Maimonides explains, that everything in this world ultimately contributes to the ability to do what God wants us to do, to make the world conform to His master plan. Sometimes we see how things contribute to that. Sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes we can't figure out why does God allow for certain things to happen? What benefit is there? We don't know what the benefit is, but be rest assured that there is a benefit, and that benefit accrues to our ability to fulfill God's purpose and plan. But who embodies that? Who demonstrates that the whole world was created for us? It's the one who studies Torah for its own sake. Because the person who studies Torah for some other reason is covering up the fact that the whole Torah was given to us to fulfill God's purpose in creating the world. If you're studying Torah for some other benefit, that means you're focusing on the benefit, that Torah is there to serve the benefit. No, the benefit is there to serve Torah. Which comes first? The chicken or the egg? The famous question.
Who got across the road?
Right. Why are there all these benefits in the world? Why do we have everything that we have in this world? Food, air to breathe, and everything else that exists. It's there to serve humanity, so that humanity, and specifically the Jewish people, but by extension all of humanity, they also have commandments that are part of the overall master plan. That's why everything was created, to serve that goal, to serve that objective. But if you're studying Torah and you're thinking, I'm studying Torah because it'll give me some benefit, you're putting the cart before the horse. No, the benefit is there for the Torah, not the Torah is there for the benefit. So a person who studies Torah lishma, for its own sake, that person dramatically shows how the whole world is worthy being created for this person, because this person gets it right, knows exactly the role of Torah, as opposed to the one who studies Torah for some benefit. In that case, doesn't see the whole purpose of Torah and of existence. This person is called beloved friend. Whose friend? God's friend. What does that mean, that God is a friend? You know, there are many ways in the Torah where it describes God's relationship with us in multiple ways. God is our king. God is our master. God is our father. God is our mother. God is our sister. God is our friend, our spouse. God is our friend. Each one of these describes another aspect of God's relationship with us. What is it about a friend that is stronger than any other relationship? So people will say a friend can't be stronger than a relationship of a parent, of a child, of a sibling, of a spouse. Yes, a friend has something that nobody else has, because a real friend, it depends how you define friend. Today, if you use the word friend, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, Facebook.
Friend, right, Facebook destroyed whatever value there was in a friend. Facebook destroyed. A friend is not just someone that is an acquaintance of yours, someone that you might even like, and someone you'll chat with, someone that you'll gossip with, someone that you'll have him over for dinner, that he'll have you over for dinner. That's not what we mean by friend. That's an acquaintance, and there's nothing wrong with that. A friend is someone who you feel you can trust totally, and you will confide in your friend as if it was yourself. Just like you confide in yourself, you're not going to hide something from yourself, you won't hide it from a friend. If there's something that will hold you, even a parent, children will not tell everything to their parents. Even spouses, which are closer in many ways than just a child to a parent, they will not divulge everything. And it's not a good idea for a spouse to tell the other spouse every bad thing they ever did in their life. It could upset a relationship. But a friend is someone you can tell him anything. You can tell them anything, and it will not detract one iota from their relationship. That's the definition of a friend. Someone once came to the Rabbi and asked the Rabbi, how come your Chassidim, your followers, are so devoted to you? You know, it's like not normal that they're so devoted and committed to you. And the Rabbi says, because I am a friend to them. So that's all you are, a friend? So the Rabbi asked him, do you know what a friend is? And when he couldn't really give a good definition, the Rebbe told him exactly what I just said. A friend is someone who you can trust totally. You can confide in that person. How many friends does a person have that fit that description? Most people have zero. Most people have zero. But there are some people who have one or two like that. But it's rare they should have more. And the Rebbe says, I'm a friend to all these people.
But can your wife or your spouse can be a friend too?
Yes, that could happen. Yes, that can happen. But whenever you have other relationships, sometimes that gets in the way of being a friend. Like a child to a parent has to have respect for the parent and can't just feel comfortable just talking about anything with a parent. Sometimes relationships prevent friendship, true friendship. But you could have both. You could have both, but it's rare to have both. So God is not just a master, a king, a father, a mother, a spouse. God is also a friend. But how do you develop that relationship, that intimate relationship with God, that he can be called a friend? That's for learning Torah for its own sake. Because there, in that case, there's no ulterior motives. There's nothing there. You love your children because it's your children. That's proper, that's good and great, but it's still, there's a reason why you love them. A friend, there's no reason why you should love the friend. They just develop a friendship, and that friendship transcends everything. You can't lose, a true friendship you can't lose. when people are true friends, and again, it's elusive, it's almost non-existent in society, but a true friend is, even if you betray the friend, they'll still be your friend. We're siblings. We know, tragically, there are siblings who don't talk to each other, who don't get along. The children don't get along with their parents, where spouses separate. Every relationship has its limits. True friendship, how do you measure true friendship? That there are no limits to it. That's what learning Torah for its own sake means. Your love for God is so incredible that there is nothing in the world that can detract from it. You become a person, one that loves God, one that loves humankind. Because friendship is not always one of love, it's one of closeness, but it's not always manifesting love. So this person who studies Torah for its own sake, it's because they're in love with God. And they're also in love with other people. Because what separates us from other people? Why are we sometimes at odds with other people? Because we all have selfish interests. Our selfish interests sometimes get in the way of another person's selfish interests. And that's human nature, that someone else is competing with me, someone else is taking, or I perceive that they're taking something from me. Sometimes you get into an argument with someone, and it's always because of your selfish interest. But if you study for its own sake, you transcended selfish interest, at least in one respect, in your relationship with Torah. So that enables you to overcome your selfish interests that divide you from other people, from other members of humanity. One that gladdens God and one that gladdens humankind. What does it mean to gladden God? Gladden humankind, I understand, but how do you make God happy? Is God sad? Could you describe sadness and ascribe that to God? God has no physical feelings. So we have to look at a deeper definition of gladness or happiness. Yes?
You say God has no fear. How many times in the Torah you will say that God was very angry at the Jewish people?
Okay, so we have to understand that same thing over here. How do we say God is glad? How do we say God is angry? How do we say God is anything? How do we describe God? So I'm just going to focus now on gladness and happiness. What is the definition of someone who's happy? A deeper definition is that the person is open and not closed. When a person allows their inner workings to come out into the open, that's happiness. When a person is sad, they're locked up into themselves. They're completely locked into their own selves, and they can't go out of themselves. Joy is expressed in Jewish literature as expansiveness, of liberation, of breaking out of the things that limit you, that inhibit you, that cover up your true feelings. Joy is a state of revelation. Things could be in a state of concealment, and things could be in a state of revelation. When you're happy, you're revealed, and it manifests itself in being more open to other people. When a person is sad, they're not interested in relating to other people. They want to stay just high by themselves and fret over whatever bad things are happening to them. When a person is happy, they're much more sociable. They want to relate to other people. They want to join with others. And they'll overlook even things that others did to them that was not so good. A typical analogy given is that a person who's marrying off a child at a wedding, they're in such a state of joy that they'll even allow for their enemies to come to the wedding, and they'll embrace the enemy. When you're in a state of joy, you're much less judgmental. For those who have ever taken a few shots of vodka and are a little tipsy, and someone walks into the room that you didn't get along with, you might even go over and embrace them and kiss them. You might punch them in the nose as well, because it brings out some deeper latent feelings. But very often, the joy that you experience makes you more open to other people. That's what joy is. Joy is revelation. When we say something was done to make God happy, what that simply means is that God is sometimes in a state of concealment. We don't feel His presence. But when God is happy, that means God is revealed, God is exposed, God is not hiding, He's not concealed. So when we study Torah for its own sake, we reach a level of Torah that is very openly godly, so that helps to make God's presence more revealed and more pronounced. And the same thing with other people. We bring joy to other people. We break down barriers. When you study Torah for its own sake, it breaks down a barrier, because all barriers are created when you do things for your own selfish interests. When you overcome selfish interests and you relate to Torah for its own sake, then those barriers between you and other people also fall to the wayside. And the Torah clothes him in humility and reverence, and equips him to be righteous, pious, upright, and trustworthy. It keeps him far from sin and brings him near to merit. Here we're dealing with another category now. Torah doesn't make you humble, because ultimately, even if you learn Torah for its own sake, you have to work on yourself. Nothing that you do will transform you overnight. So if you want to be humble, you have to work at it. But sometimes you are working at a disadvantage. You have no preparedness for it. When you study Torah for its own sake, it prepares you. It softens the resistance, and it makes it easier for you to be humble. Because sometimes a person can learn Torah for its own sake, and that can make you the opposite of humble. And you think to yourself, look how great I am. I'm learning Torah for its own sake. No one can be better than me. No one can be holier than me. So you do have to focus and work on it, but it helps. It makes it easier. It clothes you. Clothing is something that you wear. It's not in you. So it envelops you, and it prepares you for humility and reverence, and equips him to be righteous, pious, upright, and trustworthy. What do these four things mean? Righteous usually refers to someone doing things right, giving tzedakah, let's say, giving charity, fulfilling a positive commandment, doing something positive. That's called righteous. Pious is someone who goes beyond. Someone who says, I know I can satisfy my obligations if I do X, Y, Z, but I'm going to do more. That's called pious. That's the word in Hebrew, chassid. Where does that word come from? It comes from the meaning, a word that means going beyond, not just being satisfied with doing good. You want to do better than good. You want to go beyond. The person has certain obligations that he fulfills, great. Then he's called a tzaddik, righteous. He does everything right. The chassid is one who goes beyond. And the next thing is yashar. In Hebrew, the word yashar means the one who goes straight. Straight means doesn't veer off course and do things that are wrong. That's yashar, that's straight. The Hebrew word, the Hebrew name for the Jewish people is Yisrael, Israel. The first three letters of Israel spells the word yashar, straight. We are a straight people. We are a people who do things straight. You know, where did that name come from? Jacob was wrestling with an angel, and in the end he asked the angel to bless him, and he says, your name is not Jacob, but Israel. What did that mean? What's the difference if his name was Jacob or Israel? The word Jacob comes from a root that means crooked. Akev means to go around things. Akev also means a heel, but it also means to go around. Sometimes you have to do things in a roundabout way. You can't do it in a straightforward way. Jacob had to trick his brother Esau into selling him his birthright and into getting the blessings. Sometimes it's an emergency, you have no choice. There's question, and I think they went to the Supreme Court, if the police use deception to get you to enter their home because they have suspicion about you, and that it's legal. Sometimes the FBI will set you up and deceive you to get rid of the criminals. Sometimes deception is necessary, but that's not the ideal. So the angel blessed Jacob. From now on, you're not just Jacob. You don't have to do things in a crooked way, in a roundabout way, in a circuitous way. Your name is Yisrael, which comes from the root, which is Yashar, straight. You'll do things in a straight way. You won't have to deviate at all.
He's in, you say Israel, it's like Yashar, and the Aleph Lamed is the head.
Right.
God straight.
You're doing things for God in a straight way. You're not deviating. So when you learn Torah for its own sake, it gives you the ability, makes it easier for you to reach that level of doing everything straight. And then trustworthy. What is trustworthy more than the other things? So one commentary points out that who was called trustworthy of all the great people in the Torah? Does anyone know who God refers to as trustworthy? Moses. It says, in all of my house, he is trustworthy. So one interpretation of that is, sometimes God reveals things to a prophet, as he did to Moses, but it's not for public consumption. It's only for him. But he wants more than anything else to tell you. I'll tell you a story. It happened in the beginning of the 20th century, where a certain Jew had a son who wanted to travel to America. And the father didn't like the idea. And the father went to his Rebbe, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the fifth Rebbe said, don't go. You should not go. And the son didn't listen. And he was on the Titanic. So the father came to the Rebbe and says, why didn't you tell me? If you told me that this is going to happen, apparently you knew, then I would have stopped my son from going no matter what. So the Rebbe said, believe me, I didn't know, but you should have listened to me. What did he mean by that? So one understanding of that is that there are certain people, holy people, who are prophets, to whom God entrusts certain knowledge, but they're not allowed to divulge that knowledge. Now, the greatest temptation is for them to divulge it, to save a life. But they're faithful. God tells them, I'm only giving you this knowledge on the condition that you don't divulge it. And that's what Moses was, that even though Moses was privy to more information than anyone else had, he could have won the lottery anytime. He could have, you always wonder, these fortune tellers tell you, they can tell you your fortune, they can tell you a lot about which lottery number is going to win. So why aren't they so rich? So, yes.
So a person who has this power, like in the Nevi, that can know, they're allowed to tell you not to do something, just not allowed to tell you why.
It depends on what they're told, but apparently sometimes they're told, if you want to have the rationale for this, sometimes a person has to listen without knowing the reason. If someone, a holy person, tells you something and they don't give you the reason, that's not a reason not to do it. And sometimes they're being tested, what degree of faith and trust do you have in this person who's a godly person. But if Moses was told not to tell, and he's given private information, as much as he would want to tell the people to prevent them from doing the wrong thing, he was faithful. He didn't divulge the secrets.
Isn't the true message the most high thing?
But listening to God is the reason why pikuach nefesh is the most important thing, saving a life. But if God tells you not to save the life, you have no right to go against that. Now, in most cases, God says we should do everything to save a life, but sometimes God gives the information and He says, don't divulge it. I want people to figure it out on their own. A little bit of a related story. There was a young man who came from a secular background, and he wrote letters to the Rabbi, and the Rabbi encouraged him and inspired him, and little by little he started to become more observant. He started to keep kosher, he started to keep Shabbos, and the Rebbe told someone who had a relationship with him, I want you to try to convince him that he should grow a beard, as the Hasidic custom is. But don't tell him that I said for him to do it. So this rabbi, I know who the rabbi is, I heard it directly from him. This rabbi spoke to this man and said, why don't you grow a beard? You're growing in your Jewish observances, why don't you grow a beard? He says, I would in a minute if the Rebbe would tell me. And he couldn't, he wanted so much to tell him, yes, the Rebbe told me to tell you. But he couldn't. But he spoke to him and he couldn't impose himself on him, but inspired him, and months later, he grew the beard, and then he told him that was the Rebbe's wish, that he does so. And the Rebbe explained that I wanted him to grow his beard. He would do it because I told him it would be my beard. I already have a beard. I don't need two. Sometimes a person, in trying to educate others, there's a way of dictating, this is what you should do, and out of respect you'll do it. But it's not theirs. So sometimes you have no choice. You have to help the person and you have to give them guidance. But you always want to leave things open and not divulge certain things about their mission, so that they do it on their own. And sometimes a person who, especially a leader, feels such an urge to say things and he doesn't say them, because this is God's will. That's what trustworthy means. That even when you're trying, trustworthy doesn't just mean that you're not going to cheat someone. You don't have to study Torah for its own sake not to cheat someone. It means even when there is some very positive reasons that compel you to divulge information, but if it's not God's will, you're willing to forgo that. It keeps them far from sin. It doesn't say it stops you from sinning. You always have free choice, but it keeps you far from sin and brings him near to merit. It doesn't force you to do good, but it brings you near. These are all things that don't take away from free choice. So even if you study Torah for its own sake, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be righteous. It just makes it that much easier. Okay, we'll have to continue next week. Any questions?
So, if you read Torah, you study Torah, you are a much better person.
Yes, although there's no guarantee.
Person who studied Torah and very good know Torah can be bad person.
Oh yeah, sure. In fact, the Talmud tells us King David had teachers. One was Doeg, and one was Achitophel, and they were the greatest scholars, and they were the most evil people. But they didn't learn Torah for its own sake. The Talmud says they learned Torah for their own selfish reasons. If they had learned Torah for its own sake, there's still no guarantee, but the odds are that you will not be a bad person. If I had to bet on it, I would bet on them, because they're studying Torah for its own sake.
Imagine if they didn't study Torah, they would have been much worse.
Why anybody will study a Torah for the bad? I mean, for doing bad?
Because they're bad people and they're studying Torah because they want to use it for their own power. I can give you an example.
Can contradict good.
A hypothetical example would be someone who wants to become a powerful influence in a community, in a religious community, and the only way he'll have influence and power is if he's known to be a scholar. So he studies Torah and knows the Torah very well, and then people respect him, and then he has power and he can do whatever he wants.
Politician.
Right, you can use Torah for the wrong thing.
To become a rabbi.
A rabbi.
Oh, it could become a,
I don't think a rabbi will be learn.
Depends on the rabbi.
yeah, conservative rabbis who could be scholars, and yet they're not keeping everything.
You could study Torah to promote yourself. Just like a person will study physics to become a very prominent physicist and win a Nobel Prize. You know, that's the worst. It's not the worst thing, but it's a selfish thing, and it could be used the wrong way.
I never thought about it as a way that study Torah to do bad with it or to use it.
Okay, because you're a good person, you didn't think of it. But
What if not?
some people think of it.
Thank you, Rabbi.
There are some people who will love the study of Torah, and they don't believe in a single word of it.
Yeah.
And they don't follow any of its commandments.
Why do they love it?
Because intellectually it's very stimulating. My father was once in Atlantic City, not gambling, no. He was building a mikveh there. And someone introduced him to a Jew, an elderly Jew at that time. This goes back 60 years. And this elderly Jew was probably a man in his 70s then. And they said, this man knows the Talmud by heart. My father was skeptical, so my father tested him. And he knew the whole Talmud by heart with Rashi's commentary word for word. And this man would go to the beach every Shabbos with a pad and pen and write his commentary on the Talmud, which is against the Torah to write on Shabbos. He didn't believe in it, but he was a scholar. He came from Lithuania. He learned in one of the major yeshivot, Slobodka. And so it's possible to learn Torah and do the opposite of what the Torah says. That's possible. But if you learn Torah for its own sake, it's unlikely that would ever happen. Because you're not looking for benefits. If you're looking for benefits, you can use the Torah for whatever you think is a benefit.